Hi everyone, it's Maria from Jadot Le Papier. Thanks for joining me on my channel for those who have been with me for a while, and welcome to anyone new. Today I'm doing a flip through of BeachcomberJournal. It's a larger journal, actually it's a larger book, and it measures 7.5 wide by about 10 inches tall. It has a changeable cover, which I'll show you in a second. The original spine and the original book, I think, was a library handmade bound book that housed National Geographic. So that spine was just under 3, but the alligator mouth is definitely, let's see, about 3.5 inches wide. Tried not to do alligator mouth, but you know how that happens. The cover, and here's the original book. This is how I purchased them. So it was built, and I wasn't able to change the spine, but someone hand built it, real hard chipboard. I think it's meant for the library system. And they had bound National Geographics. This one had 1940s and 50s general U.S. cities and National Geographics. This one is about California, and I'm going to make this one into my own book. But mine is built using one text block, traditional bookbinding, so it does have the floating spine because of the single text block. The cover is changeable. I just have this hairpin from Sarah. So I built a waxed paper. This is a twice eco-dyed paper. You'll see a lot of them in the book. And then waxed on top of that, so it changed the color, made it really strong, and made it into a belly band on the cover on top of this vintage ticking, French ticking fabric here. And I just put the card in here, fauna and flora, animals and plants of the sea. But you can change that up and make it maybe your own postcard or your own photographs, or you could change it depending on your mood and just slide it in there and secure it. You could put any of your ephemera on top. You'll see I did my magnetic starfish again. So I have the starfish with an actual bracelet with seashell charms on there, just hanging out. There are the magnets on the back. And I just installed screws, little screws, metal screws and metal grommets to the cover so that you could magnetize it anywhere. And the screws really are meant to reinforce the fabric, just so, you know, even though it's glued, I didn't want it to start peeling off. So that's there, but you can remove this when you're working through the journal. The journal will come with this miniature collector's tin, or a curiosity tin instead of a curiosity cabinet, with shell pieces, rocks, agates, little tiny driftwood, pieces of sand dollars. I won't go through this in detail, but I did make the origami boxes to fit this. Some of them have lids, but I'll go through and number the ones that I hand selected or selected here in the Northwest, here in Washington State and Oregon State, since I was recently in Cannon Beach. I'll number them and give you a list of what's included, and then I'll also highlight which ones are from South Florida. And I'll just start right up. So as you open it up, I wanted to leave some of the cover exposed, so I tried this coffee stained wax paper. But then I found that I had extra pieces of waxed and eco-dyed and then stenciled papers. So this one has a stencil of a coral in the background. I hope that's showing through with the sunlight. And then a lot of die cuts. Another piece of wax twice eco-dyed vellum paper that I made into an envelope, tiny envelope, and it houses this little 67 was the last time. It's a retired military card, French card. So military personnel. On the cover are these 3 women who are looking at their seashells. And I love them because they'll show up in a second. And this is a twice eco-dyed tracing paper. And then I printed on it after eco-dyeing, and then I waxed it. So you'll see the see-through nature. You'll see the flowers underneath there. And then these 3 kids from New Jersey are sitting on top of this document cover from 1862. So this cover is kind of brittle, so I went ahead and reinforced it with some vintage wool. And then on the inside are the same three ladies who are actually looking at what might be, I thought it was driftwood, but I love that photograph. So again, it does have the floating spine, single text block. You'll be able to see it expand there, but I kept it pretty raw. I envelope on the cover with a few things, extra dies. But in this eco-dyed twice waxed belly band inside the cover is a document from 1732. So this is a French document, and look at all that tiny delicious writing. So it's a full floating sliding belly band. Is your definition for, or some guidance on beach combing, night collecting, diving, etc. So I thought that would be fun for this Beachcomber journal. Or rice paper. This is actually from Jib and Neri's Oceans kit that I purchased a few years ago, and I love the seahorse on there. And I didn't want to hide this original blueprint or this technical plan because it's just too old and beautiful. So this is from 1924 for some machinery, and this is a pocket here. Make sure I'm in. And then of course everything goes without saying, all the papers are vintage and or antique. The base pages, there's over 144 pages sewn into the text block, and each one has a little bit of handmade paper on the inside to give it some space, so that as I added ephemera, it gave it a little allowance. So a pocket here with just a few images that are vintage, printed to photo paper. Your first charm is a tinted key. And then on the back of this document here, this document itself is Italian, but I lined it with some authentic ledger that I had, ledger bits from the 1850s. You'll see this throughout the journal as well. A photograph of inspiration, some of your shells, and then just backed with some antique French ledger paper. And then some of the die cut skeleton, what do you call this? And then I backed it with some rice paper, handmade rice paper that Tracy from Tracy Tries Journaling made using tissue or the napkins. And I just like that you might be able to show some things behind it, including some of the writing. It's just a short end of the blueprint paper. Authentic Italian pages. This layout here is actually my favorite, not because of the shell information and some of the scrap eco-dyed blueberry paper from Love and Inspiration in the UK, but right here this coupon points to the center. I kept it in here, but once I glued the text block with the muslin and the glue for bookbinding, it hid the pin. There's a pin in here that kept the documents together. So if you just kind of pry it open just a little bit right there, you'll see the pin head that was holding the documents together. It's kind of sad that it's not showing because I kept it in here on purpose. Some of these fabric eco-dyed tabs are from Jib and Neri, the same ocean kit. Kind of sad that I'm giving up some of these tabs, but you know, I'd rather have them go to good use. I love this ocean faring image. It shows someone who painted on the bottom of some vintage ledger, so I thought that might be inspirational for whoever owns this. And here is an authentic prayer card from a convent in France. It's a prayer by Saint Therese for sailors or sailing, safety of sailing. Some of the Grand Magasin Louvre papers are the perfect size, and I love writing on this. And then these are authentic stamps, also from Jib and Neri's kit, that have seashells and fish from the ocean. These two are from Singapore, and then this one is Tanzania, Romania, die cut there. And you can journal on the back. Second charm is a little fish on its line, fishing line, because some of these pages are delicate. This is a German advertising card for this company who's selling a little booklet here on how to build your own aquarium. So that's pretty cool. some vintage ribbon, and this reminds me of a fishtail, even the ratty side of a fish fin, because on the other side is your first layout for your art journal. I envision this as an art journal. If you're ever stuck on what to put in your art journal, you could look to Pinterest and find some ideas. So I found this one because I love the colors of the fish, and I'm not the best watercolor painter, so I just used it as a guide to paint some fish. I wanted to give you some sea glass paper that has been waxed on tracing paper, and then these are actual post-its in case you want to label things. So I added a lot of labels for you, just in case you want to sketch or add some of your own ephemera and or sketch some of the things that you're finding on the beaches. These were inspired by Gibbet's original tags from one of her field guides. And this is my twice eco dyed. At first it was that light blueberry. It turned out this sea green, which was perfect. Probably because I added baking soda, and it came out all torn and tattered. I added this 1700s cotton rag paper from France, and then did some stenciling using some of my ink from Ferris wheel press. It's a little sparkly, and then made this into a tuck with some things on the front, little bits of the fabric from the front cover, and some stamping and stenciling, and then repairing any of the rips with stitching and or paper. And then on the back, I added this flip from an antique photo album, and added this lady who's actually washing some of her seashells. Antique Italian pages. If they're not French, they're antique Italian from Rachel at Roxy Creation, and then some coffee stain papers from Inky Fingers Society. Another tab from Gibbet's kit, Ocean's kit, and then the first little agate charm, which actually looks a lot like a fish fin or a tail. Here's the color swatches from my first fish, and technically the second fish as well. But the second fish that I watercolored for you turned out a little bit lighter. Just went with lighter blues and a little more silver. And then here's some inspiration paint swatches from Pinterest, some information from one of my shells book, so that you can sketch and or look for these as you're beach combing. Those are some nice blues. Seashells of the World guide, and the Sea Glass Hunters guide. So you might see some book pages. Vintage typewriter paper that's see-through, so you can see the image below. And this is a vintage photograph of ladies at a beach, and I've just use some washi tape. If you don't like your washi tape, you can take your scraps, any of your paper scraps or trims, and just glue it right on top of the washi tape. That's my little hack for the day. More eco dyed and then stenciled with some of my Ferris wheel press and some stitching of rips. I started to wax it, and this is why I left it here. Waxing it, just like the cover, the front cover, turns it a completely different color that I didn't like. I love the sea green, sea foam green, so I stopped waxing this just as I started again. And they reminded me of either octopus tail, octopus legs, or jellyfish legs, so I just put little bits here. This document here is actually from the 1700s French cotton rag that I get from Miab, just like the first one in the very beginning there. It's awesome to write on. And then these ladies, I love these ladies. It's two actresses, I think. This is Malibu 1933, so that's from the public domain, but I love this photo. It's only photo cornered. Not all images are glued, so that you can move them throughout your art journal. More typewriter paper. And then this document is 1873 French. It's a lease that's been updated from an original document dated 1841. So it looks like an update to a lease. More of my eco dyed one was waxed, but I waxed it on top using Dorland's wax instead of the iron melting of the wax, because I didn't like that color. So this way I protect the stenciling, and it kind of makes it waterproof in case you get this wet. A little bit of fabric trim from the front cover. Kind of looks like a fishing line with a lure. And then here's another charm. This one is your seahorse, which has a seahorse on the following page. So here's the inside of this 1800s document. To this overhead projector paper, just so that you can see behind it. And also as you move it over either your journaling words or your text that you add, it just looks pretty cool with that calligraphy. Another bit of the 1800s, 1700s cotton rag paper, French cotton rag, some die cuts, and there's the back of it there. So more of the projector overhead printing. I made these into tucks. They look like specimen cards. It's from Your Creative Studio onto this vintage measurements paper. I think that's Italian. A little bit more of my eco dyed and then stenciling. I did not wax this one either because, again, the sea green, I hope it's not being faded out from the sunlight, but sea green with a big wave. And then on the back is room for some writing. You'll see a couple more of these small envelopes that I've created. Just look inside. I might have extra, die cuts for your own specimens and or sketches. And then this is a stamp and another tab that came from Gibbet's Oceans kit. I probably should have saved myself one. I love these layouts for your beachcombing treasures. If you want to number some of your items and then maybe log sketches or pieces of them in here, you could do that. So if you have corresponding numbers on some of these tags, maybe you could document them inside your journal. Being held with this little bits of your projector paper, I glue them down, but if you want to remove this and glue your envelopes down, that works too. More inspiration from Pinterest, because I love the rocks, broken rocks and holy rocks that you get from the beach. And I just printed it to the projector paper so you could actually journal on the back here. Yeah, so there's two types of paper. Either the more creamy paper is Arch's watercolor, hot pressed, so it's a little creamier in color, or this white mixed media by Strathmore. So this one's going to be more white. So you can see this is where I practice my sketches. An empty envelope, but I love how it turned out because it's just a book page and it's really ratty and tatty, just like things that you bring back from the beach. Another envelope. This one's about your seabirds. The little penguin stamps that were designed by Gibbet from that kit. And then one of these sacks, tracing paper bags. Heather has her tutorial on inside is another book page. This one is about keyhole limpets, and then some of the different abalone type of shells that you can find. Inside here is some inspiration. Don't forget, you can collect rocks and anything in between. And if you have a photo that you love that you've printed from a digital, I've been cheating a little to give it this structure. I print a photo paper, but then I just glue it straight onto old postcards, whether they have writing or not. Maybe some scraps from some of the eco-dyed ledger paper just to create more tabs. So if you run out of these tabs, I've printed you some here, including on this 1850s antique French ledger that I eco-dyed. But I just love how old it looks and how it has a little bit of writing peeking through. It comes from my Beaches book. It's called Beach, A Book of Treasure. And I thought you could either fussy cut these rocks or use this as like a little booklet. So I just added this eco-dyed blue paper. You could tip it in if you wanted to. More supplies for your tabs or your specimen labels, some authentic French writing, antique French writing from, I think it's the early 1900s. Some of these cigarette labels. This is the first way that you can show some of your plant specimens if you don't want to, if you don't have supplies to make your own. You could buy these stickers, whether it's on Temu or Amazon, and then instead of using it as a sticker, I just peel it open and I add my plant specimen inside and then reseal it. Then you could just, so this is actual grass that I got near the Puget Sound up in Seattle. This one's empty for your own. And then again, I use some of the transparency paper bits, and I cut it and I just glue or staple it down onto my paper to hide the belly band, so it just looks like it's hanging out and floating. Some of my eco-dyed and waxed paper greens that turned out a little wild, so I've just been ripping them up to make them into seaweed. This is the coffee stain and burn papers from Inky Fingers. I thought this would be a cool way to create your own map or multiple maps of your favorite beaches, or your own treasure map. So I've given you an envelope full of eco-dyed and stained wax paper, or tracing paper that has been waxed all the way through. Some of the die cuts, you could create your own ocean scene or your own beach scene. One of the transparency papers, see how there's a lot of edge that hasn't been printed on? That's where I cut and make them into hidden tucks on the different pages, so any little bit that's not printed on. But I love this image because it could be a great way for you to paint some of the shells that you find, and then also include your watercolor swatches. Antique from 1827. This is a little bit of accounting cotton rag paper from France. Beach combing or beach walking, and it was one of those view cards, so I just cut it in half and made them into side tucks here on top of this coffee stained ledger with a computer paper. These edges are what I use for covering up washi tapes that I don't like, just to create my own washi tape. I love this layout. So some of the book page, all the book pages on this side have some gesso, so you could sketch on them, but I just love that I spilled more black ink. I'm always spilling ink everywhere. Places for you to document your own findings, your own specimens, your own sketches. And then this side here, I did not gesso in case you want to maybe do some acrylic painting on that. There's the other side of that viewfinder. Antique document from this one, I think, is 1913. And then more eco dyes. So this one is an eco dye stencil. This is the paper from Sue. Added some of my waxed eco dye here. Used some chalk to create sort of a silhouette of a shell underneath the sea. And there's the backside and a little sketch. But some of these shells could be great inspiration. They're from a vintage book, but I printed them, so they're, I believe, in the public domain. Silhouettes. This is a photograph I took of Cannon Beach. They had all this beautiful tangled driftwood, and people, either they were burned in a fire previously, or people started using them as fire pits. So wrong, but it's so beautiful. So this is just on clear photo corners, so you can replace it with your own photograph. But I did put down in here on a note, August 24th, 2025, Cannon Beach, Oregon. Some of the die cut skeletons, and I love how you could just put your journaling in the back. More of the French cotton rag paper, that's antique from the 1700s. And this tag is a science tag from Tracy Fox, I believe, her kit. It's a list of seashells. So what I'll do is I'll list the seashells that I personally collected here from the Northwest on here and give it their matching number. A bit of antique French book page, a sea glass viewer that I made of waxed and eco-dyed tracing paper. So if I had a flashlight, let's see if this will reflect. No, that won't reflect any light back here. You could see my hand through it, but it's pretty cool. So it was just a die cut skeleton and then a little label about the sea glass. And I love this antique photo of this little boy and his mother walking on the New Jersey coastline. So this is glued onto antique Italian paper, book pages. That's me. And the other side, more sea glass, same image, but now printed to the blueberry eco-dyed, but not waxed and not tracing paper. So this is the, oh no, this is the blue food dye paper. And I just added some French school paper in the middle for your journaling. And then this one is a waxed paper with some more waxed sticker paper and labels. When you wax sticker paper, it becomes washy like. So I don't know if you could see the sheen on that. So you could stick it down somewhere, but it won't really stick forever. So you either have to glue it and or just move it about. So it's not as sticky as washi, but either document the shells you've captured or add your own little images on top and your own labels. Image of rocks. Remember, rocks are still pretty and you can paint them, especially all the different speckles, different lines and hues, and then 1, 2, 3, 5 more spots for you to put your own specimens and or documents. This one came from my mom's garden, not the beach, but you could see how I made these into belly bands, I believe, all of them. So you could just tuck some of your dried flowers in there. This I made into a tuck and then gave you more specimen tags on the inside. One of my favorite beach picnic photos of the old women in their jackets. This is the New Jersey shore. I don't remember what year, if it was the 40s or 50s. And I just backed it with some of that French ledger. One of my favorite layouts, just because of the how sea glass becomes sea glass. Bottles that either fell out or fell off of ships, people throwing their garbage in the sea. Over 50 years, eventually 50 or more years, these little bits will turn into little chunks of sea glass, which I do have in the shell box. This is sea glass, but it hasn't quite gotten as smooth, so it's a younger sea glass. It's still a little rough and sandy, but eventually it'll become the shiny sea glass over time, over the years. So when I've waxed over the photo, it's printed to photo paper, and it creates that depth of color, but then I also printed it to tracing paper and then waxed the tracing paper to protect the ink, and it just has the best smooth feeling. More dictionary and encyclopedia book pages from Italy. My own driftwood photo that I've glued down just because I love how it talks about hills and trees through the forest. And on this page here is actually an authentic book page from my birds book of an osprey, which is also known as a fish hawk. So they do live by the sea and they mainly eat fish. So they dive down and snag the fish from the waters. And their little eggs are actually speckled brown. And I had already made this egg printing to tracing paper or vellum and then covering it with glue. So I'll link to that tutorial on how to make the stained glass windows from Virginia. She has a tutorial on YouTube. I'll hold it in place. This is actually that same tuck that I used previously of this sailing, the person who painted on old ledger, and I printed this to old ledger, the 1800s ledger, and made it into hidden journaling envelope. So you could see some of the old writing from the 1850s there that wasn't printed on. And then I put this 17 or 1800s receipt cotton rag paper from France. And you can see the beautiful writing there. And then you could see some of my eco dyeing on the inside. My little bird paper clip here on the other side. A great inspiration for how to keep your curio collection, curio box. And then your belly band made from the projector paper, the see-through projector paper, and I added some of the die cuts just to show that it looks like a film strip. This is your watercolor, a little creamier. This is Strathmore mixed media paper. So you could do your own painting and sketching and writing, lots of space for writing or more sketching. And then you could see the stitch work of each of these leaves, which is a piece of paper folded in half with either handmade paper or ledger paper in between. More inspiration of shells to paint or sketch, and I just love my eco-dyed antique paper here that still shows the original staining and water damage. And then one of my favorite New Jersey families also, New Jersey shore. I love that image. The dad looks like he's lost in a thought. This is my photo, Cannon Beach. I call it Dog and Fog. The fog was so thick for 8 hours, so this is all I really could see. of anybody for most of the day, and I love the reflection of the sun. But this dog spotted me and started coming towards me because it could probably smell my snacks and my treats in my purse. That's a story of every dog. They just always smell that I have food in my bag, which is true. They're not wrong. 1841 French document. Right there, 1841, and the beautiful writing. And then, of course, I couldn't tear that off. I just made them into pockets so you could see the plan on the inside. And then this is a, did I make this into a belly band? Yes. I left this as a belly band. And it's more inspiration from, oh here, from Pinterest onto this antique Italian book page, and more images that are belly bands on the inside of the big book page. This one's a belly band as well. So I die cut skeletons and die cuts of film strips and places for you to add your labels or your notes. More driftwood. So this tag here is actually just to show you it's actually a pocket. See? More skeletons that are tucks, or you could leave them. This floating document is optional, so it doesn't come with the kit, the journal, but it's all just beautiful writing. And it's a legal document with some math on it. But this is an original photo press photograph of this violinist. It is from 1946, September 8th, in the story about Dorothy Averill. She's a concert violinist, and how in her New York City apartment she has her own collection of seashells from far off shores. So I love this story. So this is optional, and I won't be sad if whoever purchases this does not want to purchase this, because I purchased this from eBay. So it's a pretty special piece of ephemera. More ledger. Extra paper just hanging over the ledger for you. Again, eco-dyed and stenciled. Some fish. Ideas from Pinterest on how to sketch and or map out sketches or paintings of your rocks. More of the skeletons I included for you so that you can use them in your own layouts. So I love the raggedy look of this, just because anything, at least for me, from the beach ends up turning raggedy or feeling. Sketch and then paint different rocks and the beautiful effects of real rocks, like some of my rocks in my collection. Beautiful specks. So this one's from my collection. This one actually comes from Peru. And then this was a rock that someone had carved into a clamshell, or into a, yeah, I think this is a clamshell carving. I might have missed some. Oh, I did miss a couple of these charms. Sometimes I forget to show them, but one seashell charm there, and then another on the front of the page. So that's a silver sea charm. Okay, so this is porcelain. You'll find bits of this on the seashore as well. They come from ships that were lost at sea during storms, so they'll lose a lot of their porcelain that comes from China or other parts of maybe Portugal. They'll break apart in the shipwreck, and then they'll sink to the bottom and eventually make their way to shore. And then I printed it also to tracing paper because I love the blue effect. And then you can see your writing in the background. Vintage. This is a German ledger for the company and their insurance for employees. And here's another little bead. It's a glass bead. It's half blue, half clear. Other side is a photo, one of my foggy photos, and that photo is not blurry. That's the fog. So I love that I was focusing on Haystack Rock in Cannon Beach, and then everyone else just turned out really blurry. So this is not a bokeh effect or anything. This is real fog affecting my photograph on my cell phone. You could replace that, of course. So, but I do have the place and the date. I love these pieces of handmade paper, sea blue and sea gray, and then of course one of the skeletons, so you can make your own little layout with your own photographs, and then another printed rocks inspiration to transparency paper. That, and this ledger here is Dutch. This is a Dutch, no, is this the German one? This is the German ledger, I think. Yeah, German. And then you can see how beautiful the ink, the fountain pen ink. Can draw on these old vintage papers. There's no leaking, no bleeding. Ultra fine works as well. So these are sea urchin. Of course, they're covered in spikes before they die, and then after they die or they've been eaten, then all you see are the remaining shells with a hollow in the middle there. Your side belly bands here, and here's a little bit about how sea glass and pieces of the porcelain are found where they're found. So if you look between shells and kind of hidden, sometimes you'll find a little treasure of porcelain. And then on the back it shows you how these bottles that are just discarded or fall off ships, especially the antique ships, how they eventually turn into your little bits of sea glass. Using these die cut offset pieces for my miniature envelope, so it's half waxed. And then more images from Pinterest on different shells and the color variations. Field notes on this Japanese rice paper. Yes, that was part of my original carousel ink spill. It covered so many different types of paper on my desk. It's just unbelievable how many hand marbled paper that I used as a reinforcement for the paper pages, just because it looks like a little bit of the sea waves coming in. My photo, another foggy photo. And this is the one where I just love the fog effect, and so I printed it to tracing paper. And then there's the photo paper version. It's not as foggy looking, so I just love that effect. My ledger, eco, coffee stained and stitched. More ideas on how to store your shells. That would be a cool idea. I'll see if I have little bits of ledger left over. A tin. So box of seashells. More skeleton from the die cuts, and I made this into a ledger backed journaling card, and then a matching little bit of the ledger paper, and I just put a little bit acrylic paint base, and then I carved the acrylic paint to create the shell ridges. So I took a hairpin or something, or a needle, to create the ridges, and then I layered it with different watercolors, including my gold watercolor, just to kind of give it a little bit of that effect. Inside, I washi taped these little bits of ledger, antique ledger, for you, because you can maybe create these into little labels. So your specimen cards, instead of using the scientific or the tags that I've given you, if you need really tiny bits of paper to create labels. More slides with your die cuts. More book page, Italian cotton rag book page, and then some scrappy bits of Italian and French, Dutch papers, and I just stamped them with the Your Creative Studios shell stamps, which I love. And then some of the book page. I love these ladies who are fishing. Okay, not everyone fishes the ocean like this. In fact, I don't know if they can catch. Looks like they caught something. But I just love how happy they are. Back of a book plate, antique book plate. I put some more of my little double eco-dyed bits that look like octopus or jellyfish. Did I show you some of these pictures? I might include one of these exposed, and left these giant jellyfish exposed and stranded. Hopefully the tide came back in after I left. A little page from the sea glass book, and history on what is sea glass and how does it become art. Isn't that beautiful? Antique tissue lining of a old ledger from the UK. It actually has the silhouette of, you probably can't see it there, of a shell at the very top. And of course how much the book cost once upon a time, I think. So I tipped this page in, this British one, just because of the seashell embossed. But then this is the original tissue that covered this book plate. More old book page. I love these ladies who fish. I don't know why. More of my ink spill on some original blueprint, a house blueprint, but I just love the ocean sea blue. Sea glass origins, and they come mostly from shipwrecks from hundreds of years ago. Dutch receipt paper, which might be fun to sketch on. So long receipt. I made a little tab, a floating tab that you could glue down or staple down anywhere, or use as a floating specimen card to a tuck, but you could glue that down. Oh, beneath it, this paper here is original to the book. So this was the end paper, more eco-dyed and waxed paper with a skeleton. More eco-dyeing. This one I just tipped in with a little bit of washi tape so you can move it and create a pocket. Some of my own sketches on vintage art sketch paper. And then you could, of course, number your sketches and document where you got them. More, this is my all-time favorite label, and the shell colors from Pinterest, or die-cut skeleton. I did not glue this down, but this could become a pocket or a tuck somewhere. And my eco-dyeing was meant to look like Haystack Rock and Cannon Beach. Didn't quite look like that when I dropped the ink, but... And then these are antique French ledger papers. They're actually champagne tablet papers, but I love how soft they are. Photograph Cannon Beach, so similar to my Cannon Beach photograph. Just different lighting, different hue. Fall colors, antique ledger, or vintage ledger. I think this is the Dutch ledger. I just love the blues. And then more eco-dyed, waxed, and stenciled. This is jellyfish on the cover, on the front of this. And this is just folded over the top with more of the ledger bits. I didn't want to waste anything, just in case, you know, you actually want to journal in this book. Backside, and then a little bit of information of the back cover, which you'll see in a second. Oh, Sheep's Head Bay, I believe, in San Francisco. So this is coffee stained wax paper, baking wax paper, and I originally had it to be your end paper, so it's actually stitched into the book. But then I love this image that came in that photograph book of these photographers in the seashore, this fishing boat. Whoever built this used actual bookbinding tape, so that's why I think it came from a library. The hardest chipboard ever, and here's the back. And they knew how to build the spine and how to build, you know, labels for the spines. I did not remove this because I would have had to tear the fabric apart. Things I've cleaned it up, but I wanted to expose and leave the original bookbinding blue tape there, and then just give you your vintage ticking. So I hope you enjoyed that flip through. And again, it'll come with your own curiosity tin. Thanks for joining me. I might be making a smaller version of this. I'm not sure if I have enough material, but I'll try. But my next journal will be the Mermaid, and then I'll be starting the Christian Dior book 3. So thank you, and happy autumn. It's still 90 degrees here, but supposedly fall is on its way. Thanks again.